Dan, food addict, bulimic.
I did.
Thanks, Shwindo, for inflating my head a little bit there. Definitely go to good use. Thank you, Carrie, for the courage to, or granting me the courage to sign up for something like this. Um, yeah, I guess, I mean, there's nowhere else to start. I mean, I grew up here in Omaha, Catholic family, grade school, high school, college. We're just about all Catholic, with one exception. I had great parents. I did have some bad relationships like early on as a kid, and I've shared those with my sponsor and came to kind of learn through God's economy. There's nothing wasted. So I'm so glad he shared that with me, and that it really helped because I think we a lot of us, whether we recognize it or not, have incurred some sort of trauma in our life that we've held on to. And I think recognizing that God wanted us, I mean, want is probably not a good word, but God did intend for that to happen for a reason, and we can either sulk about it happening, or we can try to figure out why it was that we had to go through that darkness, and I think it's to help others and share with others, share your story. So, like I said, my childhood was great. My parents were great. I have not always held that belief of them. I've maybe recently become a lot more grateful towards them and forgiving of simple mistakes that maybe they have made. But as far as they're concerned, they were always great to me. Um, in writing down my story, I did have an early childhood memory of my mom taking me to therapy for my weight, and like I had totally blocked this out for my entire life, and I remember going to therapy like as a kid and just being like, huh. I mean, I obviously was unhealthy because I would get called fat at school, so I would go home and tell my parents that, and my parents are probably just like, well, what can we do? And they did take me to some sort of therapist. And I do remember them saying, like, towards the end of it, like, "Hey, there's a group you can go to." I don't know, I don't remember if it was OA or not, but I just remember recoiling and being like, "No, I'm not going to go talk to some people about that." Like it was something I definitely did not want to do at that time. But I do remember it being brought up, and I guess in God's economy, I was not ready to work with others at that point. But anyways, I had developed a need for food, and I liked food from a very early age and was hiding food, uh, and whatnot. In high school, I wrestled, played football. I got involved with pot freshman year, and alcohol actually before freshman year. So just escaping reality. I got into trouble. Um, got arrested, blah blah blah. My senior year of high school, I had 3 years of pot and alcohol under my belt at that time, and my ego was, I didn't have a lot of self worth, and I realized somebody had told me I didn't have a date. Probably my mom or dad reminded me I didn't have a date for prom, so I was like, well, there's this one girl that I've been talking to, and um, I don't know. I'll give it a shot. I'll ask her. And I asked her, and she said no. And it was tough. I wanted control in that minute, and I had heard about bulimia, and that's what I resorted to. That's how I got control in that minute, and that's how it kind of started for me. It was just a rejection, and then it continued on for a lot of my life, and I'll kind of get to how it kind of it carried me, and I've been told that I needed it to get through stuff, and I think I did. So it began in high school, my senior year. After that rejection, and it was kind of convenient. I had a brother who had allergies, so my parents would once in a while mention, "Hey, you have red eyes," because I'd been sticking my finger down my throat, and I was able to just say, "Oh yeah, it's allergies. Like my allergies are acting up," so I could play it off, and they were none the wiser. Although I think my mom had figured it out later at some point. After high school, I did win a state football championship in high school. I'll just bring that up. That's one of my claims to fame. We played against the Rudes, Barrett and Bo Rude from Lincoln Southeast. So just kind of a nice little another head inflation there. But anyways, first year of college, I went to St. Louis. Anxiety through the roof. I'm using alcohol, pot, and now I've got to be. I didn't. And when I lived with my parents, I lived on the third floor, and I had a private bathroom, so I was able to hide it pretty well. But now I was living in dorms in college, and I wrote down ninja. Like, I had to perform bulimia as a ninja. So in these bathrooms, it was not easy. Like, I'd have to choose the right times when nobody's having to go. So college in St. Louis was not fun. I remember going to class one morning at 8 a.m. and we're walking across this busy street, and I'm so close to just passing out from a hangover and from purging. And I just remember I got to do something, but I couldn't figure it out. So eventually it got bad enough. My parents told me I could have a car if I went back to Omaha. And so I moved back to Omaha and started college at UNO. The car that they gave me was a 94 LeBaron, which will come up again in my story. So a great car for picking up chicks. But it was a car nonetheless, and I can get around now. I live with my brother, so again I had to hide it, and I was not that was not very fun. And then I moved in with one of my friends, and I had to hide it. And then eventually I talked myself and my dad into getting me my own place. And of course, all my problems are going to disappear at this point because I have my own place. It's not the case. All my problems doubled or tripled because now I'm living in isolation by myself, and the disease has me by myself now. So while I thought it would be the best part of my life, this is actually when everything just starts going off the rails. I do end up graduating from UNO. And then I also learned to start jogging to get rid of hangovers and also to address some self-hatred, which was a good thing and bad thing. I still like to jog once in a while, but I'm 42 now, and it just doesn't work as well on my knees. But that's when I kind of started to exercise a little bit. I took a year off from school and worked at a local bank here. I hated it. It was a 9-to-5 job. My disease again had its arms around me, wrapped tight, and now I had a 9-to-5 job that I had to go to too, which I would call into sick once in a while. But I was generally a pretty good employee because I could switch between disease. On the weekends, alcohol took over, and then when I had to be sober, Sunday through Thursday, food. Nobody at work would smell food on you and be like, "Hey, you can't work." If they smell alcohol on you, you can't work. So I didn't like that job. I asked my dad and some other people what they recommended, and Creighton Law came up. I got in, one of the very last people to get in for that class. I had to get help from family to help me get in. Law school was tough. It was probably one of the toughest things I've done as far as just life. And wrestling with the disease, it was very tough because they were just growing at that time. I lived by myself. I started off top 25%, which was pretty good, and finished at top 35%, but that's mainly because people left, so you just gradually kind of move down. But I did spend a lot of time in the library nursing hangovers from alcohol, and then when I wasn't nursing a hangover from alcohol, I was developing one from food. So it was just a nice kind of counterbalance to each other. So I did eventually graduate law school, and I started working. I actually had a year where I couldn't find a job, and that was not easy either. So going to professional school and then not being hired, not being able to find a job, probably because I wasn't very motivated, but I was, just looking for reasons to be sad at this point, and to hold on to the disease even more at that point. So, but I eventually did get a job. I worked bankruptcy law for about 3 to 4 years. Now I'm more into liquor than beer, but still just as much, if not more, into the food. Um, I did hit a rock bottom with alcohol eventually. It was my family had done 3 interventions with me, and I don't know what it was, but I think ultimately it was the idea of people pointing at me and knowing that I chose alcohol over my family that ultimately brought me to my rock bottom to decide to quit alcohol. I did have to go to intensive in care meetings, but eventually it worked. I relied a lot on fast food to get sober from alcohol. A lot, like from one joint to the next on Fridays and Saturday nights. It was ridiculous. Um, to my credit, though, I did start going to meetings, AA meetings, and those are what ultimately got me where I am. I did lose 40 pounds right away, getting sober from alcohol, which was a nice little plus. Um, I did have after the third time my dad had started or informed me we were going to be doing an intervention, I, for some reason, decided to go through a walk in Elmwood Park. And that's when I think the spirit touched me. It was at nighttime. I was walking by myself in Elmwood Park. But I just needed to, I don't know, it was giving up. It was that feeling of serenity where you're neither winning nor losing. You're just at peace. And I figured I'm going to give this a shot, and I'll try my best. Got sober about 2 months later. I had known my wife through work. She worked for a trustee here, and we had seen each other at court. And she had informed me that she was single and was interested in dating. And I told her, she actually asked if I wanted to go for a drink, and I told her I could go for a drink. It couldn't be alcohol. It'd have to be coffee or something, and she was okay with that. So we started dating, even though it's generally not recommended in AA to date so soon. I'm sure, as you guys know, okay to break. I like to break rules, so that was how that worked. So I was through meetings and a sponsor, I was able to successfully work the AA program and get sober, but food still had its claws deep into me. I did move to UP at that time, and I worked 8 years there for doing contracts. I was sober, and doing that job, I realized I could do just about anything because the more work you handle, the more they give you, and I just got to a point where I was like, I can do anything, but I also got burnt out. And along came COVID, and then I realized, this eBay thing's actually not a bad deal. So I started selling on eBay and realized I can make that a job. So now I'm self-employed. I just have food and exercise as my addictions, but my body's starting to break down because I'm 40 at this point, and I needed something else because I'm starting to gain that 40 pounds back, and I was sitting at AA meetings praying for God to help me through 6 and 7 to help with my weight, and I had multiple talks with my sponsor, and nothing was working. And I remember him saying, some of these things don't go away, and you just learn to deal with them better. Which was for better or worse. But eventually, my rock bottom for eating, I was using food to help me sleep, and it had stopped working. So it was about 5 a.m. and I'm sitting on my computer working in our living room, and my wife comes down because she gets up at 5 a.m. to go to the gym, and she knows that I'm not an early person, so I've been up all night just working or whatnot, and it hurt me for her to have to see me like that at 5 a.m. In that chair, and that made me want to come here. My first meeting was on home relationships during the holidays. I think December 10th was about the time when I think that's where my sober date is. I need to look back on my text, but my alcohol one is December 1. I think that life's holidays and other things put pressure on us around certain times of the year, and I think that's a good thing. And I think whether whatever it is pushing you to better yourself. It is like I have life milestones, so years too, because I got sober when I was 29, and I came here just after turning 40, and I just felt like I needed something. You get those milestones or whatever holidays like that you can look at as being a bad thing, but I think it's a good thing if it pushes you. Also, just sitting in here with people was awesome. I felt connected immediately, even though that first meeting we didn't talk about food. Um, I felt the connection. Uh, my experience has been that meetings are non-negotiable. I have to come to meetings in order to stay healed, and I have to have a sponsor. I have written down preferably an asshole, but I think that's I think that's a bad word. Somebody who you think is an asshole. They're not really an asshole, but somebody who tell you what you don't want to hear. You need like I've had so many sponsors, and the ones that tell you like it is are invaluable, and it's tough as a sponsor to tell people that. It is we're in a day and age where you don't want to hurt people's feelings, and to come in here and have somebody tell you that you're doing things all wrong is no good. Or no, you're doing things is no good in your head. The other tools that they talk about are the steps. I would just say there's no perfect way to do the steps. Just in my experience, as long as you're doing them, you're set. Food plan sounds way worse than it really is. You still have leniency even with a food plan. So there is a little bit of your will left in there. Not much, but there is. Action plan, that's when God came back into my life when I started doing action plans. Prayer and meditation, I felt like that's when I actually came back into my life. Like I got to learn about myself again. Phone calls has been more God. I see God through you guys. And then literature is great for when you're bored. Just to kind of wrap things up here, how hard was it? It was hard. It was definitely worth it. The more that I gave up, the easier it has gotten. So if I can just continue to remember that, you have to use a lot of trust. Put your happiness in somebody else's hands. I'm going to end with a story. Hopefully, I've got a minute or two. I can just give a story. When I drank, I used to drive my green LeBaron 1994 to the bar because I was a smart alcoholic and I drank and drove. But it had a leak in the roof because it was convertible, and there would be a puddle up in the front, and I hated it, even though it was a gift from my parents and I could get around. But every time I went to the bar, I went to this local bar by my house. It was called the Elbow Room, and I would hit this red light, and the red light took forever. It was on 48th and Center. And I would just sit there and I would talk to myself about what I'm going to do tonight to not black out. And normally it would be something along the lines of, not taking shots, waiting an hour in between drinks, or just developing these different rules. And I sat in that red light, 1,000 times, and I could never figure it out because I would always black out from the drinking. And eventually I'm just sitting at the red light one night and I'm just like, F this. And I just drove through it. And that's how I got around, thinking out a way around alcohol is I just gave up. I decided there's no way I'm going to accept the addiction. And I didn't think that there was another road to take. I could have gone to the bar without going to that red light. But it kind of mirrors that story of I go down a road, there's a hole, and I fall into it. I go down a road, I see somebody who tells me there's a hole in the road, and I still go down and fall in the hole. I go down a road, and somebody tells me, hey, don't fall in that hole. I still fall in the hole. And I think for food, it has been 1,000 times more sneaky in my life, because when writing this, I was trying to think of when was I at my red light? Like, when was I trying to fix the disease in my head? It was every morning. Every morning I'd wake up from overeating, and I would sit at that red light and try to think about how I'm going to fix my life, how I'm going to fix my food. And I just couldn't do it. I had to have you guys, and I'll never be able to repay anybody in here for what they've done for me. And it is without a doubt the most rewarding thing I've done is start coming to these meetings. And I thank you guys. I thank everyone here. It is such a gift, and that's all I got. Thank you.